The sun was already baking the cul-de-sacs of Sunnyvale Heights by 9:17 a.m., turning every blade of grass into a mirror that screamed perfect compliance. I was Emily Harper, the woman whose name appeared on exactly one laminated sheet taped inside the community center. Designated records custodian. Active July 1st to September 30th compliance window. 8 years I'd walked these sidewalks with my plain black binder, measuring fence heights to the 16th of an inch, logging the exact Pantone of every mailbox, and quietly noting when misses. Delgado's Flamingo collection had crept from 3 to 7. I never raised my voice. I never posted in the Facebook group. I simply documented everything. Because in an HOA, the only thing more dangerous than breaking a rule is not having the paperwork to prove you didn't. They call me sweetheart when they wanted faster approvals, and nitpicker when I actually read the covenants. Funny how the loudest eye rollers always texted me first when their neighbor's dog left a single unauthorized turd on the common grass. Karen Blakely ran to show the way some people run a cult. Pastel cardigans, pearl earrings, and a smile sharp enough to slice through steel. President for 4 terms. She loved opening every board meeting with "We're all family here," right before slapping a $250 fine on a veteran for flying the American flag 2 inches too high. Her favorite line was, "Rules keep us civilized," delivered while she ignored the fact that her own nephew Derek had parked his lifted truck on the sidewalk for 3 straight weeks. Derek, freshly appointed operations liaison after exactly 0 community service hours, carried a little digital timer and talked about velocity like he'd invented the word. He and Karen made a perfect team. She supplied the fake moral outrage. He supplied the stopwatch. The day everything detonated started like any other Tuesday. I was standing in front of the Andersons' house measuring their new pergola, exactly 42 inches over the allowed height, when Karen's golf cart screeched to a halt beside me, pink ribbons fluttering like surrender flags. Derek hopped out first, gelled hair gleaming, clipboard already waving like a battle standard. "Emily, darling," Karen cooed, voice dripping honey and venom in equal measure. "We decided to streamline. Your thoroughness is creating delays. The community deserves progress, not endless red tape." She gestured at the binder in my hands like it was a live grenade. Derek snatched the pergola violation notice I'd just printed and tore it in half right there on the sidewalk. "We're pivoting toward operational freedom," he announced loud enough for 3 houses to hear. "No more holding up the good neighbors because of paperwork." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even blink. I simply closed the binder, looked Karen dead in her Botoxed eyes, and said, "You'll need to file the removal form with the state registrar and the association attorney before any further enforcement actions can be taken. My designation is active until a documented handoff is completed." Then I turned, walked back to my Toyota, and drove away without another word. In the rearview mirror, I watched Karen's mouth open and close like a guppy that had just realized the pond was drying up. What neither of them understood, what nobody in Sunnyvale Heights had ever bothered to read, was the single paragraph buried on page 17 of the bylaws. During the annual state compliance window, all HOA enforcement, approvals, fines, and architectural reviews require the signature of the designated records custodian or a properly delegated successor. Failure to execute a handoff triggers automatic suspension of legal authority until rectified. My name was still on that laminated sheet. No handoff had been filed. The window had 39 days left to run. I parked 3 blocks away at the little diner that overlooked the main entrance, ordered eggs over easy, and opened my laptop on the sticky counter. 5 sentences. That's all it took. Custodian removal executed without transition documentation. Active compliance window confirmed. Procedural gap logged with state registrar, association counsel, and insurer. Time-stamped, copied to my personal drive, and sent. I wasn't angry. I was simply recording. Because the truth in an HOA doesn't live in shouting matches. It lives in the logs. By noon, the group chat was already exploding. Did you hear? They fired Emily. Who's going to handle the violation notices now? Derek just approved the Miller's hot tub, and it's literally in the setback zone. Hello. I sipped my coffee and kept scrolling. From my booth, I could see Karen's golf cart zipping around like a sugar-high mosquito. Derek riding shotgun with that stupid timer. They were already printing new streamlined approval forms, bright pink. Of course, because pink apparently made everything faster. I took screenshots of every text. The devil, as they say, lives in the details. And I had been married to that devil longer than Karen had been president. The first crack appeared at 2:14 p.m. Derek signed off on Karen's own nephew's gazebo, same one I had flagged that morning, using one of the new pink forms. No photos, no measurements, no engineering stamp. Just a big looping DB in Sharpie and the words approved for velocity. I watched the crew start pouring concrete from my diner window while Karen stood there clapping like she'd just cured cancer. The irony was almost too delicious. The woman who had spent 8 years screaming about following every letter of the law had just violated 3 letters in one afternoon because she thought the rules only applied to peasants. I didn't smile. I simply turned the page in my notebook and wrote one word: escalation. The next morning, the county compliance auditor showed up exactly on schedule. Maria Ortega, the same woman who had audited us 2 years earlier, and I still remember my name. She arrived in a crisp navy suit, clipboard in hand, and asked the board the single question that should have ended the circus before it began. Can you please confirm your current active records custodian? Silence hit the community center like a dropped piano. Karen's face went the color of spoiled milk. Derek started frantically flipping through the new pink forms like they might sprout the answer. On the wall behind them, my name still sat in bold Arial, untouched, because nobody had bothered to print a new sheet. Maria didn't raise her voice. She simply started walking the properties with her checklist, and every single page turned into a dagger. The Andersons' pergola, still 42 inches over code. The Miller's hot tub, sitting squarely in the 20-foot setback zone. Karen's own backyard gazebo, now half-built with 0 engineering approval. Each violation had been approved by Derek using the pink bypass forms that had never been reviewed by the actual custodian. Maria's pen moved like a metronome of doom. Unauthorized enforcement action during active compliance window, she murmured while photographing the gazebo. Failure to maintain custodian designation. Incomplete architectural review logs. Every checkmark felt like a tiny guillotine blade. From my diner booth, I watched the text flood in. Devin from 3 streets over. Maria just flagged Karen's gazebo. She's turning purple. Tara in the treasurer's office. The insurer just emailed. Coverage verification required within 24 hours or we lose the group policy discount. Even old Mr. Gus, the retired mailman who never said much, sent one line. They're looking at your laminated sheet like it grew teeth. I kept sipping coffee, turning pages, writing down every timestamp. Because the beauty of being the quiet one is that nobody ever sees you coming until the entire machine grinds to a halt. By 11:13 a.m., the mood inside the community center had shifted from "we got this" to the exact shade of corporate panic that smells like burnt toner and desperation. Karen was pacing in her pastel cardigan, pearls clicking like worried teeth, while Derek kept repeating, "It's just paperwork," like a mantra that had already stopped working. Maria asked the question that cracked the facade wide open. Who signed off on the bypass for the hot tub during the compliance window? Derek's big looping DB stared back at them from the pink form like a confession in neon. Karen tried the usual deflection. "We're a family. We can work this out internally." But Maria simply closed her clipboard with a soft click that sounded louder than any shout. That was when the first real consequence landed. The insurer's email hit the treasurer's inbox at 11:21. Urgent. Custodian verification required to maintain coverage during open compliance window. Please confirm named individual or risk immediate suspension. The treasurer's face went gray because the answer was still my name on the wall, and I was no longer inside the building. No handoff, no delegate, no legal authority for a single fine, approval, or enforcement action until the gap was closed. Karen's voice finally cracked when she realized the hot tub she had personally cheered for was now legally untouchable. "This is ridiculous," she hissed at Maria. "We'll just update the sheet." Maria didn't even look up. "You removed the custodian without transition. All board actions taken after that removal are void. The compliance window remains open until the custodian is reinstated with proper documentation. This association has zero enforcement power." The room went so quiet you could hear the air conditioning whisper, "Told you so." I closed my notebook, paid for my eggs, and walked back to the community center. Not because I wanted to gloat, though the temptation was there, but because the system I had spent 8 years building was finally speaking for itself. And it was louder than any pastel Karen ever could be. Inside, the panic had reached full bloom. Karen was frantically trying to reprint the laminated sheet with Derek's name on it, while Maria stood there politely explaining that you can't just Photoshop your way out of state compliance. The gazebo crew had been told to stop pouring concrete mid-pour. The wet mix sat there like a gray accusation. Residents were starting to gather outside the glass doors. Phones out, filming the exact moment their HOA Karen realized the rules she loved weaponizing now had teeth pointed at her own throat. I stepped through the door without drama, binder under my arm, same black pen I'd used for 8 years. Maria turned, gave me the smallest nod of recognition, and said, "The association requires the named custodian to witness and sign any remediation or restart of enforcement authority." Karen spun around so fast her pearls almost flew off. "You," she spat, voice no longer honeyed. "This is all your fault for being so inflexible." I didn't raise my voice. I simply opened the binder to the exact page, section 6.3, dog-eared from years of quiet anticipation, and read aloud the clause they had all signed but never read. In the absence of a documented handoff, all enforcement, approval, and collection activities are suspended until the original custodian or a certified successor completes full transition protocol witnessed by external counsel. Derek tried to interrupt with his stopwatch speech about velocity, but Maria cut him off with the same calm scalpel tone. Was this override reviewed by the custodian of record? The pink form with his initials hung in the air like a noose. Karen's face went through every shade of rage available in the pastel palette. "We can fix it," she stammered. "Just tell us what you need." Maria's answer was merciless in its politeness. The custodian was removed without transition. The window is still open. Restart of any board authority requires full procedural remediation, including reinstatement of the original custodian with independent signing power. That was the moment the padlock clicked. Not a literal chain on the community center door, but something far more devastating. Maria placed a single red tag on the enforcement mailbox. Until the custodian issue is resolved, no violation notices may be mailed, no fines collected, no architectural approvals issued. The association is in suspended compliance status. The collective gasp from the board sounded like air escaping a punctured balloon. Karen's own illegal gazebo, half-built, concrete still wet, now sat in legal limbo right alongside everyone else's violations. The hot tub she had cheered for couldn't be sighted. The flag 2 inches too high couldn't he find. Her entire empire of petty tyranny had been neutered by the one rule she forgot applied to her. I didn't smile. I simply stepped back outside while the text exploded again. She just tagged the mailbox. Karen looks like she swallowed a lemon. The whole neighborhood is laughing in the group chat. From my car, I watched Karen storm out. Pearl swinging, pastel cardigan flapping like a defeated flag. Derek trailed behind her like a kicked puppy, stopwatch forgotten in his pocket. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. The woman who had spent years screaming about following every rule had just rendered every rule unenforceable because she couldn't be bothered to follow one herself. That afternoon, the call started. First, the treasurer, voice shaky. Emily, we need to talk options. Then the attorney. Then, finally, Karen herself, trying the honey voice again. We can work this out like family, right? I'll let the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Then I answered with 3 conditions, each delivered in the same quiet tone I had used for 8 years. First, I said calmly, I am reinstated as records custodian with independent authority, no board override, no HR-style filters, no velocity reviews. My signature stands alone during any compliance window. The line went quiet. Second, the compliance budget returns to pre-cut levels. You want records that hold up in court? You pay for the system that creates them. Another pause. Third, and this one is non-negotiable. Derek is removed from any operational or enforcement role during compliance periods. He doesn't touch a form, doesn't initial a bypass, doesn't come near the mailbox with that pink Sharpie ever again. Karen tried the usual threats. This will be complicated, but I simply reminded her that the insurer's email was already in her inbox and the red tag was still fluttering on the enforcement box. It's a lot less complicated, I replied, than explaining to every homeowner why their fines are void and their insurance discount just evaporated. 10 seconds of beautiful silence. Then the words I knew would land like a gavel. We can do this right, or the whole neighborhood can stay locked down until you learn the taste of downtime. By 4:17 p.m., the emergency board session was called. Same windowless community center that still smelled like Karen's desperation and burnt toner. I walked in without fanfare, binder under my arm like the quiet weapon it had always been. The board sat in a semicircle of shame. Karen in the center, pearls twisted, Derek sulking in the corner, clicking a pen until someone took it away. The association attorney projected the pink bypass form onto the wall, Derek's looping initials glowing like evidence at a crime scene. I opened the binder to section 6.3 again and read the clause they had all signed but never understood. Unauthorized bypass during active window renders all subsequent board actions null until full remediation witnessed by the original custodian. No one interrupted. Even Karen had run out of pastel platitudes. The attorney cleared his throat and delivered the verdict the board had already accepted in their bones. We recommend immediate reinstatement of Emily Harper with independent authority. Derek Blakely will be reassigned to non-operational duties, social committee. Perhaps, the treasurer added, voice barely above a whisper. Compliance budget restored retroactively. Full discretion. Karen opened her mouth one last time, but the attorney simply slid the new contract across the table, already drafted with every clause I had requested. I signed slowly, letting each stroke of the black pen echo in the silence. No gloating speech, no victory dance, just the same quiet efficiency that had kept this place running for 8 years. When I finally stood, Maria removed the red tag from the enforcement mailbox with a soft metallic click that sounded like the entire neighborhood exhaling at once. The machines, figuratively, hummed back to life. Violation notices could be mailed again. Fines could be collected. But everything carried my initials now. And everyone in the room understood exactly what that meant. The group chat that night was a fireworks show of relief and savage glee. Finally, someone who actually reads the rules. Karen's gazebo is getting the violation notice she deserves. LOL. The hot tub is being measured tomorrow, and I heard it's going to cost her $750 to fix. I didn't reply to any of them. I simply closed my laptop, walked to my own backyard, and sat on the porch that had always been exactly to code. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It was the quiet kind, the kind that comes when the scaffolding you built finally holds, and the people who try to tear it down are the ones left dangling. The real work began the next morning. Every crew, every homeowner with a pending project, every violation that had been streamlined under the pink regime had to be redocumented, remeasured, and reapproved under the original protocols. I walked the streets again with my black binder, but this time no one called me sweetheart. They called me custodian, and they said it with the respect usually reserved for people holding actual power. The Andersons fixed their pergola without complaint. The Millers moved their hot tub 6 feet back and paid the fine with a sheepish grin. And Karen's half-built gazebo? It received the first official violation notice in 8 years, signed by me, witnessed by Maria, copied to the state registrar. The concrete had to be jackhammered out. The irony was so thick, it could have been used as new driveway material. Karen tried one last power play, showing up at my door in her best pastel cardigan, pearls gleaming. Voice back to honey. Emily, we're all family here. Perhaps we can overlook the gazebo for the sake of community harmony. I didn't invite her in. I simply held up the binder and flipped to the new clause the attorney had added that afternoon. Clause 5.7.1. Termination of the record's custodian during any active compliance window requires written concurrence from the association, insurer, and external counsel. Any attempt to bypass triggers automatic 90-day suspension of all board authority. She read it. Her pearls clicked once, twice. Then she turned and walked away without another word. The woman who had spent years weaponizing rules had just been handcuffed by the one rule she never saw coming. Derek was quietly reassigned to holiday decoration coordination. Last anyone heard, he was arguing with the Christmas light committee about whether icicle lights violated the exact wattage covenant. The neighborhood watched with popcorn-level amusement. The group chat blew up again. Derek is now in charge of tinsel velocity. Send help. Even the residents who had once rolled their eyes at my clipboard were texting me thank yous and baked goods. Mr. Patel left a 6-pack of the exact brand of beer I liked on my porch with a note. Thank you for keeping the peace the right way. Mrs. Delgado removed 2 of her flamingos without being asked. The change wasn't dramatic. It was quieter, more focused, like the whole community had finally learned that rules only work when someone actually reads them. I used the restored budget to build the system I had always wanted, digital logs that couldn't be backdated, photo timestamps, automatic alerts to the state registrar. No more pink shortcuts. No more just this once. The new protocols were laminated in 3 places now, and this time people actually read them. The satisfaction wasn't in the fines or the power. It was in watching the scaffolding hold. Every time a new homeowner moved in and asked why the process took 3 weeks instead of 3 days, someone would point to the community center wall and say, because we have a custodian who actually cares about doing it right. 3 months later, the compliance window closed with a perfect report, 0 findings. Full insured discount restored. State registrar stamp of approval. I signed a final certification form in the same black pen, dated it, and handed it to Maria with a quiet nod. She smiled for the first time since the whole mess began. You built something that actually works, she said. Most people just hang pretty rules on the wall. You made them mean something. Karen still shows up to meetings in her pastel cardigans, but the pearls don't click with the same authority anymore. She sits 2 seats away from the president's chair now, reduced to voting on flowerbed color palettes, while the real authority, the one with the binder, sits at the head of the table with independent signing power. The neighborhood has never been more orderly, yet somehow less oppressive. Residents wave when they see me walking with a clipboard. Kids on bikes don't scatter. Even the dogs seem to understand the new normal. 1 leash length, 1 bark volume, 1 set of rules that everyone, including the president, actually follows. The last time I saw Karen's gazebo, it was a perfectly compliant 12 by 12 structure with the exact permitted materials, set back exactly where the covenants demanded. The concrete had been jackhammered out and replaced under my direct supervision. She never thanked me. She didn't have to. The red tag that once hung on the enforcement mailbox now sits framed in my office, a quiet trophy of the day the entire neighborhood learned that the woman they called Sweetheart had been the only thing standing between chaos and civilization all along. And somewhere in the group chat, someone posted a single line that summed up the entire saga better than any speech ever could. Turns out the real HOA Karen wasn't the one enforcing the rules. It was the one who thought the rules didn't apply to her. I didn't reply. I simply closed the app, picked up my binder, and went for my usual dawn walk through the perfectly compliant streets of Sunnyvale Heights. The grass was still green. The mailboxes were still the right height. And for the first time in years, the woman carrying the clipboard was finally, undeniably, in charge. The scaffolding held. The brakes worked. And the next time anyone tried to move too fast without reading the fine print, they would remember exactly whose signature they needed and exactly what happened the last time they forgot.